My name is Jayda Love, and I am a recording and mixing engineer. So I'm actually the only person in my family that does music or played an instrument, but my family loves music, like loves maybe a little too much. They love dancing and playing music. My mom always had music on in the house. Um, yeah, just love like radio, parties, barbecues, anything. It's just we love music. And then that kind of turned me into getting into band. I was a band kid. I played drums and I was a percussionist through middle school and high school. And then somewhere around high school, it kind of transitioned to more like online stuff, being on the computer. I'm from Jersey, so Jersey club music was really big when I was in middle school and in high school. So I thought I wanted to be a DJ, and then I realized I was terrible at parties. I ironically hate loud music. So I then flipped and was like, maybe I want to be making the music. And so I started kind of doing like YouTube University on production, and I got GarageBand, which then graduated to Logic, and just kind of really taught myself. I had a really good high school band teacher who like showed me like what a MIDI keyboard was, and I would come in on like my free period and just like mess around with stuff. And then it kind of transitioned to like I always thought the producer was the person sitting at the board, and I was like, that's the producer. Like that's all you knew. You knew the artist and the producer, and like album credits. Everything was online, so I didn't really get to see it unless you really dug for it. And then like through the internet, through online forums and through like Twitter, I found out like what a mixing recording engineer was. And I was like, oh, that's what I want to do. And then it kind of just flipped, and it was conveniently around the time where I was looking for colleges and stuff. And so I ended up going to Columbia College Chicago for like 2.5 years, 3 years. I'm unfortunately got interrupted by COVID, like right smack in the middle of my college experience, but it kind of worked out in a really beautiful way because I got an internship at Classic Studios in Chicago, which to me is like one of my favorite studios in Chicago, if not my favorite. And through that, I got a mix assistant, I got an apprenticeship, and I was able to slowly make my way out to LA. I was doing the freelance run along, which was just saying yes to every session and being on different studio Rolodexes and just kind of getting calls 30 to 20 minutes before you had to be there and just saying yes when I was available. And that's exactly how I met Doe. It was, hey, we have this session here. They forgot to book an engineer. Can you come? And I was like, I can be there in 20 minutes. Is that okay? They're like, yeah, we'll make it work. And I'm like, I feel like that's a pretty decent time window, but I like Uber. I had no car yet. I like spent what I probably made on the session on an Uber to get down there. And then, yeah, from North Hollywood to downtown. And we just recorded, and then we ended up, clicking. She liked the way I worked. I loved what she did. I really like kind of looked into her more and listened to her music and just thought it was really cool. Found out she had recently signed to TDE but hadn't been announced yet. And so like from them, they were kind of, planning her announcement and just her releases. And I've been lucky to be a part of, 95% of what she's released since she's been signed. So that's kind of, and that was, I think maybe a month after I decided I was going to stay in LA. So, things kind of just work out the way, they're supposed to. Yeah, so it's actually through a very close friend of mine named Brian Schwaller, who's also well, he's from Chicago. And I met him when I was in Chicago, and me, him, and our buddy Headache, we all kind of had this like Silicon Valley-esque setup in their apartment where we just had a table, like four desks, and we're all mixing something different. And so me and Headache had the same rig, because we were passing sessions, but Brian had a Hilo. And so I was like, what is that? He was like, oh, it's a interface. He was like, it's the best interface I've ever used. I swear by it. Like, you have to try one of these, like go on Reverb, see if you can get one. And I was like, okay. And like, I always bookmark that in my brain of like, okay, I'm going to check this out. Whenever I'm doing like serious studio upgrades, like this is like one of the top on my list. And then him and then another friend of mine, Samantha Henry, who's a Tyga's engineer, she has an Aurora N. And so I was like, how do you, she's like, I swear by it. And I was like, I got to demo this thing and just see what's going on and how I can integrate it. And I used it, and I was like, I demoed it, sent it back, and then a week later, I was like, "Yeah, I need to have this." I thought it was gonna be like a, maybe in a month I'll check back in. I was like, "No, I think I need to grab this." Not to sound like a broken record, but it's really just the transparency. I feel like a lot of people that's like their go-to answer, but it really just felt very open. Like openness, like it's like a refreshing openness. It's not big where it's like adding a coloration or a character. It's literally just like how it is how it is. And you can, it's not gonna, if it's bad, it's gonna, highlight that and you can work to make it fix. And if it's great, it's gonna show you all the greatness in that. And just from the actual, from the IOs or just even the headphone amp and just going straight out of there, it was just like, oh, this is just like all the way I hear big records on the radio or just on playlists or whatever. It's just I'm hearing it get to that point. And so that's what kind of really stuck with me. And I was like, oh, this is like how I need to be listening to this thing while I chip away and start to work on this and bring it up. Yeah, so I have an Aurora N. I have the Thunderbolt 3 module. I have the 16 in and out line inputs. And then I have an AES module that I've been using to monitor out of. So I, in tandem, use that with the Grace. I monitor AES out of the Lynx then to the Grace. Also, just like running from vocal change just into the mic, the line inputs from, Neve to LA2A to into the Lynx and just seeing, how that and it's just been really great. It's been really great. I miss it when I'm without it, even when I'm working with other studios and it's to the point where it's like I'm considering, the Mesa just like small and then also experimenting with the Lynx mic pre's as well because using the line put with the actual mic pre and swapping it out with different and seeing if I can just create that foundation of my travel rig that I know how it's always going to be no matter where I'm at. I don't think fully for better and for worse. Like I definitely don't want to like plateau at all. I don't want to like, really be at my peak super early in my life and my career. But I'm also just like in in due time, with everything that I've done, I can say that I'm proud of because I did it naturally and I did it the way I wanted to do. And I put my character in just all the relationships that I've built with artists. I've said it to them and I've said it outside of, seeing them. I support you regardless, and it's just whether we work together or we don't, that's how I always lead forward. And it's always 110%. And so I think doing it just very true to myself and doing it alongside people who I consider friends and more than colleagues is just it's very rewarding and it's something that I have to constantly remind myself to look back on and to not, super overwhelm myself. I it's the thing with freelancing and engineering. It's just, you have the best months and you're just I'm on top of the world. And then another month's like, what am I doing with my life? But it that's that's the balance. And so I'm very, very grateful to not only one have found my passion so early in my life that will keep me driving forward, but also, accolades that come with that. Not super hard at all, just because I feel like once you kind of get over the initial hump of like downloading a manufacturer's software and how it connects with the unit, it's kind of like it's not a one size fits all, but it's like you definitely see what might be easier to work with and what's not and what's a little more complicated. And Lynx was just super easy. It's just, you download the end control, it's there, sample rate, everything was there. And then even just how I was going to route my studio, I was definitely like leaning back and forth on like how many outputs I want, is there a patch bay involved, or whatever. And that's just kind of just asking peers who I know have it and just like using, my network and just, oh, how do you have, okay, you use digital, okay, you use end control, okay. And just kind of figuring out what best works my workflow. I'm not super like hung up on being wrong or just like someone's like, oh, you got to set up like that. I don't really take that personally. I think that just kind of comes with, the profession and the industry. And it's just like, oh, how do you do it? And let's try it that way. So how I have it set up now, I like, but I'm always open to changing it. And I think it's super flexible, just all the resources you have. And it's so easily available that if I have a question, can reach out to Mike or support or whatever. And if not, I can try to figure it out. It's pretty like plug and play for me at least. As of right now, I'm definitely leaning more into taking on more mixing projects. I love like just the indie space and just growing with people. It's not that I'm never gonna turn down, major label artists, and I'm happy to work with anybody, but I do love growing with people. I think that I've done it unintentionally and I realize why I gravitate towards those situations and just kind of in any capacity. I love mixing. I love ideating with people. I think there's a special connection that recording engineers have just from FaceTime with the team and the artists. I've been writing as well. So it's just kind of just overall leaning into every factor that people are coming to me for and just not really second guessing it and just continuing to build out the foundation that I'm laying, continuing to build out my studio, continuing to build out more gear, continuing to just want to learn for the sake of passion, not for the sake of anxiety. And, just, you know, combat things as they come. AI is really big right now and just kind of just with anything, when anything went digital, when things went in the box, when things went whatever, if this is our version of that, figuring out where to place yourself and just kind of again doing it for the sake of passion and for wanting to learn versus anxiousness that I'm going to lose my job. I know that's very naive and maybe very Gen Z of me to say, but it's also like for me, that helps me not burn out and just, just stay in flow with it. I know can recognize that there's, you know, people need to support themselves and this is how we do that, but also just kind of how you approach the problem, not avoiding the problem as well.